primary ignition.
This is Star Wars.
Look out!
Core World News.
You may fire when ready.
From the bright center of the galaxy, I'm Grex Kondak, and you're listening to Core World News, your whole-net news service providing in-depth coverage of the latest stories from around the galaxy. Now, your news segment rundown for July 10th, 2022. Reading Wrathjar. Now here's Ben and Adam to review Mike Chen's Star Wars Brotherhood.
All right. Thank you very much, Grex. Welcome back to another week of Core World News. Here with Grant and Adam, and we are going to talk about Brotherhood, just like our guy Grex just told us. So, yeah, a little forewarning for everyone here. This is going to be spoiler filled, as always. This is a place to either you read the book and you just want to hear some people chatting about it and mulling through all the things that happened in detail, or you didn't want to read the book and you want to know what happened. This is a good place for you. Yeah. But otherwise, I love getting right to the end of the book first, even though this one's more about the journey than the destination, for sure. Gentlemen, what did first thought?
I think what you're saying is we're cutting the braid and we're going to the underlevels. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I should have said.
I'm ready. I am so excited for this. This book is a beautiful story of beginnings, the first days of Anakin's knighthood, the early days of the war, Obi Wan's first days as post-Padawan days. It's just so cool, amongst this beautiful plot of political intrigue and sort of like movements by the separatists during the early stages of the Clone Wars. So intriguing, so cool. I love the book. What do you guys think?
I'm going to jump in because I think this might surprise you, because I sent kind of a snarky text to you guys when I was about halfway through the book. I will not reveal what that snarky text said. I really enjoyed this book. I think because what Ben had said, it's about the journey, not the destination type of book. And it is your classic slow burn of a book. And I love, as we talked about, like my complaint about the Batman is it could have been longer and slower. Like that's what I wanted out of my movies. Like I love slow burn movies, and it's taken me a while to get used to slow burn books. And so I was about halfway through, kind of going, what are we doing? Like where are we going?
I kind of want Mike Chen to continue chronicling this relationship. Like it's almost perfect. I was like, can we get three to five more books by Mike Chen just chronicling Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme's sort of development? It's so good.
It reminds me of Claudia Gray's and
it's got some Lost Stars vibes to it.
Just really good.
It's really personal, really in their minds.
Understanding the inner motivations of the characters in a way. Like I mean, it made me appreciate episode 2 and 3 a bit more with Anakin. Like I felt like I got a better understanding of Anakin in this book.
Yeah, you don't just get more dimension with Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme. You also get more dimensionality with the Neimoidians, which are just sort of like bad guys in the Phantom Menace. You get a lot of Cato Neimoidia, the history, the people, the sort of like people's patriotism there and their sort of relationship to the state. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, I think like Mike Chen definitely took exception to the Neimoidians, how they're played off, and he was like, nope, this is a risk culture, and it, teaching a really valuable lesson about how cultures are perceived. It's like you may know one thing about them, but there's always these other layers. And Cato Neimoidia is like the most beautiful, like one of the most beautiful biomes there are. It's like a hammock like civilization. They live in like hammock cities, and then with like arches over hammocks and stuff as well. It's just strikingly beautiful.
Suspended cities amongst the mountains, like it's in the clouds. It's gorgeous. What a gorgeous place.
Yeah. And guys, I don't know if you saw this, but this is not the first Mike Chen rating Star Wars that we have read.
Certain few, right?
Yes, he did the Disturbance chapter with Sid Darth Sidious in.
That is such a good chapter.
It's just like I'll never forget that chapter. I think about it all the time, and it's really, it's Sidious sort of understanding Luke and Luke's potential as a a threat really to Sidious, like. Which is, it was a fantastic.
Oh, I mean, his handling of Palpatine in this book is off the charts. I loved those scenes, and you get some really impactful moments in Anakin's arc in this book. I mean, you get
Yeah.
But we'll get to it. But later, I guess it's midway through the book, I think he talks about his mom and what happens.
Yeah, I mean,
You know,
I think that's
yeah.
part of what is missing from the prequel movies,
Mm-hmm.
and why the Tale of Dark Plagueis the Wise is perhaps one of the best scenes in all of Star Wars history.
So
And definitely, in my book, the best scene in prequel history is that similar. Like some of the issues we get with prequels is that we don't get the relationships explored that we want sometimes.
Yeah.
And this book does both of those things. Like we don't get a lot of Obi Wan and Anakin in the prequels. In reality, when you think about it, they're split up so much in those movies that we don't get the Brotherhood, right? And then we don't get Anakin's seduction by Sidious very much. Like we get it a little bit, and so I'm glad these stories are starting to look at those things, and it really builds out that era.
Yeah, so much in feature films is just like this happened, deal with it, and then it's like if you want to know what happened, you got to read the comics and the books, and that will sort of tell you the deeper story there, which is a great model. It's fun.
It's hard to. I mean, you got 2 hours, right? What can you do in a movie in 2 hours? It's hard to get all those elements in. Yeah. The other thing is just kind of going back is that Mike Chen did some of the work that needed to be done without it feeling like homework. And what I mean by that is dealing with the Neimoidians.
Yep.
Like the Neimoidians are an issue in Star Wars. We've all talked about it. It is an issue that needed to be addressed. And Mike Chen did a beautiful job of addressing it without explaining it away, right? But also looking at it and trying to make it, you know, a counterpoint, right, for racism and bigotry that we've seen in America, right, and bringing it into this book that felt supernatural. And the other thing he did a really good job with is that Star Wars is often critiqued from sci-fi fans a lot in that planets are known for one thing, right? Like usually like there's one cultural thing that a planet is known for, and you know it's why it's fantasy, not sci-fi. And so I think doing the Neimoidian discussion of the Neimoidian and giving them a cultural identity, but still diversity within that identity is really important and entertaining.
No, it's truly fascinating. It's also fascinating that they're pointing to the core worlds for generalizing the Neimoidians, whereas I think parallel to our real world, it's the people living in the outskirts who are generalizing the sort of I guess the nation states of our world and sort of generalizing the people of those places. And in the galaxy, it's the cores. It's this snobbery, this sort of like highfalutin living where they disregard planets outside the mid rim, and they just sort of like they live in their fruitful lives without thinking about these disenfranchised people out beyond. And you know, the separatists are. Count Dooku is not strictly seen as evil. He's also a figure who's sticking up for this confederacy of separatists, you know, worlds that are breaking away from the Republic because they disagree with that sort of sentiment.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how it's almost there's a lot of inversion and reversals and parallels and to our real world. But just a beautiful job exploring the Neimoidians, saying that not all Neimoidians are Newt Gunray. Newt Gunray belongs to a splinter group that has broken away from the Trade Federation and Cato Neimoidia, and sort of and it really giving depth to that and letting us understand that Newt Gunray is sort of this rogue figure who's a part of the Separatist Council and not a part of Cato Neimoidia, and loved that. I just thought he just beautifully handled that entire thing and gave more life to the Neimoidians that previously was just they were just the bad guys in the Phantom Menace. It was not great. I think it needed this extra context.
100%.
Yeah. I don't know, you know, how granular we want to get on this thing, but I found like there's like really just like 3 or 4 major themes that they dealt with here. And, you know, going into this book, I was sort of like, what are they even going to cover? You know, that wasn't covered in the Clone Wars animated series, you know. It turns out a lot. Yeah. But so
especially inner thoughts, inner feelings. Yeah. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot. Yeah. And so, yeah, well, so first of all, yeah, it's very cerebral. It's like moment to moment, what first person, what the character is thinking and doing. And it just swaps between all these different points of view. But I think it's Annie and Padme's relationship, and Annie and his relationship with his cybernetics. I didn't realize that was going to be such a big like point, but that was huge. Also, his relationship with sand is explored in detail. Yeah. and then and Annie and Obi-Wan, and then but also it's it's about their relationship going from father son mentor mentee to brotherhood, obviously in the title, but it's the way that they go about it is like their relationship with Qui-Gon Jinn, and how they both sort of look to Qui-Gon for answers, and that was one of the things that came in there. And then the three pillars of Anakin's life, which are Padme, Palpatine, and Obi-Wan. That's like those are the only people he cares about in the world, and they all represent different factors, and he's always just sort of like hoping that they align.
Right. Yeah.
And he's like, well, if everything's working correctly, they all should align. And like just that alone is like, okay, now we understand, Revenge of the Sith a lot more in his behavior there, because there's a break and he doesn't want to see a break. And then there's another thing too that I want to talk about that's minor with Duchess Satine, but we can talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating that Obi is sort of hiding Satine and Anakin is hiding his relationship with Padme. And I was like, this is destroying them. With holding these secrets, it's destroying their relationship.
So
it's just I don't know. I thought it was
and Obi-Wan keeps like rationalizing it away. He's like, oh, I shouldn't talk to him about it.
Yeah,
talk to him about
rational about it, but he's still hiding it.
He is.
Yeah.
He's
not necessarily right.
Yeah.
He's just rationalizing because he doesn't want to deal with it head on. Because
he's 100% wrong, because this falls under what is often for me a pet peeve in TV and movies, is where a major issue could be solved with two people having a conversation. However, it worked for me in this book because of the inner monologue. Right? Yeah. Like, that's what I need is like, all right, so I totally get why Obi-Wan's not doing it. He's 100% wrong. Like, if literally he talked about Satine, like, all he would need to do, like, if he talked to Anakin about Satine, we would not have had the fall of Anakin Skywalker.
Right, because they both had something to share. I mean, Anakin has taken it a little further for a Jedi, but they both can relate and they both can share these information. It baffles me as to why they couldn't, as brothers, sort of come together on that. But it's also organic foundation for how their relationship falls apart. It's actually beautifully done. I think Mike Chen does a great job giving us those inner thoughts from Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Yeah.
Because in this book, I think you get lines from both Anakin and Obi-Wan that perfectly distill the other. And I think Obi-Wan says Anakin always moves like 7 steps ahead, unwilling to fall back on inference and using careful deduction, or I don't know the line verbatim, but it's something of that effect. And that's exactly right. Anakin he just pushes ahead. He doesn't think. Yeah. He doesn't fall back on inference. That's Obi-Wan. And then Anakin says, if anyone can find the truth, it's Obi-Wan. And I think that perfectly distills who Obi-Wan is. He's someone who's always searching to shed light and illuminate the facts and find the context, right? It's like that's what Obi-Wan does. Yeah. I don't know. Like, this is what he does.
Yeah. That's
and thwart the evil, right? Like he's the good guy. I mean, that's
Yeah. And we get a lot of investigator Obi-Wan here, where it's just like we see his methods. Dexter Jester is a big ally to Obi-Wan, but like it's cool. Like we're
really going to the Cocoa District right now.
Really past that.
I never left
just
the
out of
Cocoa
nowhere. We're bringing up quite possibly one of the greatest Star Wars characters ever invented.
And the scene's amazing. Like, they basically put a pot of coffee on and work through a problem overnight. And
by the way, Obi-Wan and I both like our coffees black and strong, and so I like. Yeah. So we're both the same.
And actually, I like my coffee like Anakin, who likes it with a little bit of cream, splash of cream.
Yeah. Well, I'm mad at your
splash of moof milk.
It sometimes pays off. All right, I'm a little jealous. Right. That admittance in this book was wild to me. I was like, oh wow, okay. But I guess you could always sense that in the movies. Just a sort of like, he does kind of just his style and flourish does pay off sometimes, and he does. Yeah. He is effective.
It's true. I think that kind of like, so I just got to comment on it now because it's been on my mind. But so behind Ben right now on a Skype screen is the scene from episode 2 with Obi-Wan and Anakin in the elevator to Padme, and they added that scene in like after they were done shooting,
Right.
Really.
I knew this was either the last scene they ever shot or the first scene they ever shot. Which one is it? The last?
The last. It's like that's why the
Pablo Hidalgo has said on Twitter that I think this is the last scene that was ever shot.
And it
kind of added
months and months after the shooting because Lucas realizes, we don't have any scenes that show that they're actually like friends and they've been through a history. So this is like the Nest of Gundark scene.
Yeah.
But after the scene, I think is even more important, and it's one of my favorite little moments in the prequel.
Do you think Rick McCallum and George are just sitting in an office, just like throwing pencils around and just being like, like you should have Anakin and Obi-Wan like in an elevator, chatting?
I don't know if it's. I don't think Rick McCallum. I don't think Rick McCallum was saying anything, but like, yeah, George, that's great. Do it. That's great. Do it some more. You're perfect.
Yeah, Rick McCallum is like, sure. Yeah. Yes, George. Yeah, that sounds great.
So I think someone else probably watched the rough cut and said, why are they friends?
Yeah.
Why do they like each other?
All right, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. So after this scene is one of my favorite things where it's after Padme goes to sleep and the assassin droid comes by and drops the little insects, and Anakin goes something like, "There's danger, I sense it," and Obi-Wan says, I sense it
too. He said like the two is like he holds onto that word.
It's so perfect. It's also why Ewan McGregor's one of the best actors ever because it shows everything. Like the whole thing. This book is called Brotherhood.
Yes.
Ever elucidate on the fact of what Brotherhood is? Right. There's not like a whole. As I remember, there's not like a 2-page thing.
Yeah.
But we think of Brotherhood as this bond of love, which it is. But it's also a bond of competition.
Yes.
Right. Like brothers don't get along all the time, and I think that's what we forget about with Anakin. Yes, they are like brothers. Brothers often compete and fight and argue and have very different personalities, and I think that's really just
that's also the missing X factor of all the discussions surrounding the prequels and I think the Clone Wars is that logistically Anakin is just more effective than most Jedi, and so when Anakin asserts himself into I should be on that planet, I think it is a selfless gesture. I don't think it's him wanting the spotlight. I think he's like, logistically, I'll end the threat before most other Jedi. And so that plays into Obi-Wan's reasoning. And I think we just missed that. I think a lot of the time people just talk around that, and it's kind of like, no, he's actually just very effective, and they use him strategically as well. He was an enforcer for the Empire, but he was also an enforcer for the Republic. He was also there to just end conflict.
That's really a good insight, man. I'm thinking about like Clone Wars season 7 where they're like Anakin comes in to save Obi-Wan again. The 212th is just like pinned down, and Obi-Wan just Anakin just like stands on the top of their foxhole looking at
Anakin saving Obi-Wan. No,
I know. And then he's just like, and they just run straight at it like the whole 501st and just like get it done. And
that was another thing that baffled me. We'll get into the kind of chronological story in this book, but early in this book, I think Obi-Wan has a chance to tell Yoda, Mace, and Palpatine about what Dooku said in Attack of the Clones, and he doesn't, but contemplates it later in the book and sort of, I guess, asserts that Yoda and the Council kind of know that the dark side is clouding them and know that there is a sort of dark threat in the galaxy looming, but he doesn't tell them directly about the conspiracy that there's a Sith Lord at the center of the Republic. He doesn't.
I think there is a scene at the end of Attack of the Clones, right, where they talk about it. Where it's a hallway shot with Mace and Yoda, and they're like,
it's clouded.
Dark side is clouded, and he's like, this happened. Should we take this threat seriously? And they're like, I don't know. And so that would have happened.
I almost wanted more of that. I was like, what's going on with that conspiracy? Are we mulling over that as the Jedi Council or the Council with Palpatine and the kind of higher up senators? Are we talking about that? Is that something are we trying to find that threat? Even if, if your enemy tells you that, I'm still going to take that information and drain the swamp and figure out who's corrupt within my system and deal with that person. Yeah.
Right. I know.
Maybe that should be the Mike Chen's follow-up, right?
Sure.
He clearly loves writing in this era. I want someone to tackle the ineptitude and failures of the Jedi Council, and not in a necessarily negative way, but similar how Mike Chen did this was why this relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan failed. He was able to tell this in a way that wasn't super depressing. It was still a good adventure story. He's tell the story of why the Jedi.
I just can't believe the Jedi don't have prosecutors like that. I just don't. I'm so confused as to why the Jedi don't have an elite branch of kind of diplomatic, bureaucratic Jedi who go.
I mean,
deal with the
org
Senate,
chart of the Jedi Council is non-existent.
They're just, yeah, I know. They're just like, and you guys will be the generals of our clone armada, and then also, deal with Senate matters, but you're just monks. Like, it's just so confusing. It's baffling to me. But then again, when you go back to the High Republic, and there's like the Pathfinder, the Wayfinders, the Pathfinders, I think, whatever the ones, the Wayseekers. Sorry, Wayseekers.
Yeah.
There do seem to be other specialties within the Jedi. It's interesting. I don't know.
I feel like in this era, and probably because of what happens in the High Republic, is that they've become very tied back to the Republic, right? And very
they pushed away and they went to the brown robes.
Yeah.
They pushed away. They got rid of all the sort of like the illustrious
we're monks now.
golden robes, and they were like, let's go back to our brown, like,
we're not scholars and explorers. We're monks. Like,
sure.
I was, before we were taping, I was ragging on the old EU a little bit as I'm working my way through it. But I'm reading the Dark Nest trilogy, which I was thinking of you.
Catalyst, so we're all, I guess, rereading books.
Yeah, it's all bug. We're all rereading bug stories. But there's a big part of that. It's like after the New Jedi Order, the Yuuzhan Vong War, and Luke is struggling about like how to make an effective Jedi Order again. And it's actually, I really appreciate this more than what happened in Yuuzhan Vong, of just like, what is the Force? How do we interpret it? Do we work for the Republic? Do we not? Like, I just think it's really interesting, and I'd love to see some more of that, with the new, with new canon.
Yeah, and especially like going on after the sequels, I'd love to see that explored again. And I do like, what we picked up in that Star Wars comic where, they tell like, well, the Jedi Order is very adaptable. And in this book, they're adapting to life during wartime.
Right.
And, but they just get essentially played like fiddles by Sidious because he's right at the middle of it. I mean, to blow a little bit of the ending here, we don't really know who bombed Cato Neimoidia. Like the problem's not solved.
No.
It's just like they say the evidence points towards both sides. Therefore, there's a third party that we should be worried about. And of course, we know who the third party is. And then all that does is give Palpatine license to bring the Jedi Order further into the war. And he's like, oh, wow, well, you better all be generals then. And it's like, okay.
I mean, that was another, that was bizarre when, like, I guess, like, at one point in the book, I think they talk about how, I guess, Padawans who are freshly minted knights are, like, sent to the front lines.
Yeah, I know, like,
and it's
10-year-olds?
because Palpatine, like, it's Palpatine's mandate for that or something like that. I was baffled by that. I was like, there's no way Palpatine's allowed to choose which Jedi are sent to the front line or have a say in that at all. And then I guess so. It just kind of perplexed me, but I don't know.
No, I agree. But I do like the fact that they didn't, like you said, Ben, they didn't actually reveal who. There was no scene. It was such restraint in the book because I kept waiting for the cut scene to Palpatine in his office going, yes, all to my plan, But like you didn't need that scene. You know it's Palpatine through the entirety of this. Like it's great.
I know because they're even like in I guess at one point in the book they're like Count Dooku's hologram appears next to Palpatine's hologram, and it stood for the stark contrast of the powers, of the stark power balance in the galaxy. And I was like, these two guys are aligned.
They are 100% aligned.
Look for everyone. These two guys. Turns out,
I kind of love.
I kind of think it's genius. I think Count Dooku's Rising is one of my favorite characters of all time because I think like the idea of the whole Palpatine Count Dooku sort of like false flag, like all these, I guess sort of like elaborate plans is like, that's fascinating to me. Like I almost want that book, Dooku and Sidious.
I just
all these elaborate sort of undertakings to like
also Dooku getting
the galaxy.
Dooku not even knowing like the extent he's being used. Like I do love George did such a good job in the prequels of making Palpatine like the arch villain. Like again, one of my favorite scenes in episode 3, which by the way, I'm on vacation this weekend, and I think it was TNT was having a Star Wars marathon all weekend long.
Oh, wow.
So we come back into the hotel room and just turn the TV on. So whatever part. So I think I kept seeing the opening scene. I think I saw the opening scene to Revenge of the Sith 4 times, as did my 2-year-old. So I'm like, I don't know if she needs to see the
I wouldn't start
decapitation of Dooku.
Right.
But I do love that scene where he finally turns Dooku's so cocky and thinks he's in on it, and then probably just like do it. The look on Lee's face is just such
the understanding and the horror.
Oh, I've been there.
I would have started talking right then and there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The treasure's hidden. Yeah.
He's the Sith.
He got a few words right there. You can say it.
Yeah. You couldn't get that out. Oh man. So, well, we're talking about the plans of Sidious right here. So, what did this accomplish? We're pretty sure it's Darth Sidious and Dooku, but are behind this thing. So he planted evidence.
We're kind of bearing the lead with Asajj Ventress is like a huge player in the story.
Her coming out party, basically.
Yeah, and I just loved every scene. She's kind of like this really ominous threat for Obi Wan and Anakin, and it's just like it did kind of confuse me because I thought they had met before, but I guess this was the first time she was meeting Obi Wan.
Yeah, because this is right after Attack of the Clones, so this is real.
This is pretty fresh. So this is the first time they've met. So that's so cool. But this is the first sort of incident with her. She's great. I love Mike Chen's writing for her. I thought it was perfect, and I could have her in more stories going forward. Like I love his handling of that character. I thought beautiful work, and just scary, and like made her biting and made her every word
menacing.
Menacing. Yeah. Just awesome character.
Powerful. Yeah. She was a real force to be reckoned with in this.
I just wanted to shout out.
I did too. It's so great. And Mike Chen talked about like old canon and this. So he talked about the original Clone Wars animated series and how like he was just trying to like thread the needle with the fans of like, well, these Anakin versus Asajj Ventress could still be canon. He just didn't know he was fighting Asajj Ventress because it was dark and rainy. I like the fact that Mike Chen, no one asked him to do this homework.
Yeah.
But he kept trying to like, same with Labyrinth of Evil. Like it's very close to the Grievous Labyrinth of Evil.
That's right.
He's like both of these.
I was like Labyrinth of Evil. It's flashback to.
Yeah. But I'm glad he's doing that. But like,
he made another Tartarovsky homage with the ship design that Asajj Ventress was flying at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ship from the cartoon.
Right.
Yeah, he honors basically all the canon that's come before, I think, and
non-canon because technically Tartakovsky's not, but I don't know. But now it's on Disney Plus, so is it? I don't know.
It's in that weird weird selection of whatever. But I think they're trying to. I'm trying to like not just pull in as much old EU canon as they can, and why not? I don't think there's anything, especially pre-episode, before episode 6, anything that really violates canon, right? Like it all can work. It's also funny. I'm reading this book right now. It takes place, and it was written just after episode 3. So now Luke is trying to found videos of R2 of Padme and Anakin from episode 3. And it's really weird. It's really weird.
What?
Are they in the underlevels or are they on another world? Are they?
No, it's like it's literally just the scenes from episode 3. Like it's from like between Anakin and Padme. So like Lucas is watching those scenes.
What book are you reading?
It's the Dark Nest trilogy.
Oh, that's the Dark Nest.
Yeah, it's part of that. That's a subplot. R2 is degrading, and there's other hidden holograms that no one knew about. So it's so weird. But I want to get back to Ben's question because I don't know if I have an answer to it, but I want to get your thoughts because, again, what is Palpatine's grand scheme?
Yeah,
I think you hit some of it, Ben. I think that's a big part of it is to force the Jedi because he knows this will corrupt their soul, right? To force them into being warriors.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the goal is always escalation, right? And I think that's sort of what we're seeing a lot right now with nationalism. It's like once you like escalate and polarize, then you destabilize, and there's opportunities there. But you drag in people that normally wouldn't care or be motivated to fight, and
let's look at the outcomes of this book. Like I think the outcomes of the book will tell us if this is all going according to Palpatine's plan or if there's X factors that he didn't account for. Because I feel like Obi-Wan getting a permanent seat on the council is something he didn't account for. And I think others could easily argue that he wants to build the rivalry between Anakin and give.
Yeah. Don't you think that him being on the council does build that rivalry a little bit more?
I think it does, but I think Obi-Wan overall is the X factor that takes down Palpatine. It's a big theory I have. It's a big like I think you can do Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Yoda if you want, but I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi is the big thing that Palpatine did not account for.
He's the undervalued
forever throughout all time.
Jedi.
I would argue.
He's always undervalued, underappreciated, because if you think about it, like Yoda is like the Grand Master, and then you have Qui-Gon, who is just this powerhouse of a legend, and then you get him training Obi-Wan, but basically kicking Obi-Wan to the curb to try to do the chosen one, and so people don't pay attention to Obi-Wan because it's almost like he wasn't there, and he just was so. I think also is like when you watch Obi-Wan and Anakin together, he looks from the outside so ineffective and bad at his job, Obi-Wan, right? Because
he's the definition of underrated.
Yeah, and so I think people underestimate him, and I think that theory, Ben, that he's kind of the fly in the ointment, or Grant, he's kind of the fly in the ointment that people aren't paying attention to for Palpatine.
Yeah, that's so right. Like Palpatine sees, Obi-Wan gets spanked by Dooku, and he's like, well, he's not going to be a threat,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Let's create this. Let's create incident on Ada Nemoidia. So Anakin and Obi-Wan basically contest to go deal with the threat or deal with it, but obviously Obi-Wan's sent, and it's kind of like this. It's the top priority for the Jedi, and it's the political hearsay for the galaxy. And Obi-Wan's being sent to deal with it. Palpatine thinking, oh, that's going to anger Anakin, or Anakin's going to be jealous that he's not on the front lines with Obi-Wan dealing with this terrorist matter, whatever. And instead, Obi-Wan gets a permanent seat on the council at the end of this.
Right? Yeah. Which is like, he did come back and the council was like, you did such a great job, Obi-Wan. And I'm like, did you read the same book I read? Like, did you see the same hollow I saw? Because like, I'm pretty sure he caused an international incident or intergalactic incident.
And had like a speech that was effective, but didn't really do anything. But it was a good speech. It was a really good speech.
Really good speech.
So I think that's interesting. Like, so when I look at Palpatine, so if we go from like, what did he accomplish in this book to his grand plan, I've kind of gone back and rewatched it and I've just simplified. His grand plan were two things. One, to get control, basically to, declare elections invalid, and to have a permanent role as leader, and the second thing is to eliminate the Jedi, right? Those are just two goals. And this book moves it forward in both ways, because Ben, as you mentioned, this sows chaos, makes the war seem that much worse. We're now killing civilians, right? Like it gets everyone rah, rah, rah. Let's keep the war going, which gives him a reason to declare a state of emergency to keep his seat. And then it also forces, as you mentioned, the Jedi to become part of the war officially. So now they are no longer considered impartial arbiters of peace. They are generals of one side of a war. And that's really easy to start turning public perception around on that, right? Because they're looked at as political pawns now.
Well, he was able to parlay it into ingraining the Jedi. But I'm just like, what did he think? A, did he know it was going to be Obi-Wan that was sent? Did he want that? And then B, like, what did he want to have happen there? Because they were planning evidence that was damning to the Republic.
Right.
So was he looking for someone to like
they didn't really allude to what that evidence was? They were like, the Separatists have evidence.
It's evident. Yeah.
Okay. I wish they had elaborated a little bit more on.
Yeah, I think we're just supposed to take it on its face value that it's like, well, these are the markers of an operation by the Separatists. These are the markers of an operation by the Republic. So, like, did he try to catch a Jedi being untrue, like, lying?
Or bearing evidence, maybe that was
like bearing evidence, or but they got the whitest knight of all the white,
the most stalwart, full Jedi,
The other thing is that originally Palpatine was going to go, right? And
that was crazy to me, by the way. I mean, I don't know if that's like prescient.
But don't forget, Dooku and Sarge would have been there. Horrible. So was he trying? Because remember, at the beginning of episode 3, he gets kidnapped, right before episode 3. And that's part of what he uses to justify more spending.
Executive power,
Right. So maybe this was an earlier attempt to do that, like to go there, get captured, and get rescued, and be able to get all this done, and actually would have moved it forward faster. Maybe that was his goal, was to get.
No, I think always throwing himself into the political fray is going to cause the Jedi to send a council member, like an elite Jedi master. And so
yeah.
I think he wanted to see which Jedi Master they'd pick. He wants to understand the power structure of the Jedi, who they send, why they send them, what their thinking is. And it also pushes them to think about effectiveness. Again, this thing I keep talking about, which is like Anakin's a very effective Jedi. Like, who do they send to go deal with this Cato-Neimoidian conflict? They send Obi Wan Kenobi just because he's temporarily filling the seat of Coleman Trebor, and I guess which was crazy to me. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Obi-Wan took Coleman Trebor. Is this the first time we're hearing that this is the seat he took and all this cool lore?
Yeah.
But that was awesome. And that was cool. And yeah, I think he wants to understand the power dynamics of the Jedi, or I guess the reasoning or the rest.
I think you made me think of something really interesting. Is we've talked about it before. We often talk about like what type of mastermind is Palpatine? Like, was he like first I do A, which leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, all the way to Z? Like, did he have it planned out from like Phantom Menace all the way up to episode 3, or does he know what his ultimate goal is, and he just throws random bombs into the mix? Knowing that he's
a lot of bombs
to pull it into his will, like to turn it to his advantage. Like, I wonder if that's part of it. He just sows chaos.
Like, conflict will inevitably help the dark side. Like, any form of conflict that transpires will help Sidious, because people have to make drastic choices in that time, and the Jedi, for them, they get spread. He spreads them thin, right? And in this, Obi-Wan says they're 10,000 strong, which I held onto that line. I was like, oh, the Jedi are 10,000. That's how many are Jedi. I never really knew that.
After Geonosis, they're 10,000?
Yeah, that number threw me for a loop. Yeah. I thought it was always that was a thing.
10,000.
10,000 sounds about right to me.
That's the galaxy. You're like, that's not a lot of Jedi to cover the galaxy.
This is why we need to get some of these writers on the podcast, because I just want to ask Mike Chen of like.
I know.
I think that'd be a great question when we get some writers. When we get writers on this podcast, we're gonna visualize it. Is to ask them, like, explain what type of mastermind do you see Palpatine as? I want to get all of their takes of like.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fantastic mystery that he leaves unanswered, which is great. I mean, I think we could probably talk the rest of this podcast just about like what Sidious was trying to accomplish there.
Yeah, we probably could.
Always.
It wouldn't even be this book, because we haven't even talked about like Rook Quorum.
I was gonna say we got some
or Mil Abeloth.
Standout characters. Yeah. Really great Neimoidian characters that we really get to sit with, and we really get to see them take different sides on this conflict, which is between the Separatists and the Republic, and who is ultimately culpable for this bombing. It's such a cool plot, and I really liked Rook Quorum specifically. I liked that character a lot. I guess she was like a sniper.
She was elite spec forces,
elite sniper who became promoted royal guard in the book, and then witnesses this bombing and sort of goes kind of connects with Obi-Wan afterwards, whereas Kitar connects more with the Asajj afterwards. Is that? I
think Roog was a spec ops for the Trade Federation, but when the whole Naboo fiasco went down, she just took a demotion as a guard back on Cato-Neimoidia, because that's where her real allegiance lay. And so so she's has all these things, but this is the person that Obi-Wan sort of ends up working with.
But it's so great to feel the prejudice and like her outlook on the galaxy and the mistreatment of the Neimoidians from. I just loved this book because it added this context that I desperately needed from the Phantom Menace, which was the Neimoidians were this one-dimensional bad guy, alien, culture. And it's like, no, like there's so many interesting facets of their culture. There's their cities, the architecture, the planet itself is stunning. Like the people have high regard for their culture, and it's also like doubles down on the sort of like attack against them when the bombing happened in the Katasura like art district. Like,
right.
To me, I was just like, this is such a powerful book. Like, I really, really loved how much dimension it gave to the Neimoidian.
It's so true. Mike Chen on Twitter was talking about how he used Star Trek Deep Space Nine as inspiration for this book, especially with the Neimoidians, because basically, in fact, if you read the afterwards, he talked about how he was envisioning the actor Nana Vista, who played Kira on Deep Space Nine. as
Mhm.
the voice of that character, and that actually the character's name is a combination of 3 Ferengi characters from Deep Space Nine, kind of all mashed together.
Oh
Okay.
wow!
And the reason why
So
he wanted to do that is, the Ferengi in Deep Space Nine were introduced in Next Generation, and they were very much caricatures of races, and it was really problematic. And then Deep Space Nine decided to let's build out this race, right? Like they're not
Yeah.
just money hungry, right? Like they actually
Yeah.
like similar to how Jen brought this idea of a risk assessment culture, right? And that's what the Neimoidians are. And so I like that both of these, like that's why I love Deep Space Nine, because it starts to like explore these things, these characters that you just laugh at. Yeah.
I love the moment in this book when I think it's Anakin, Mace, Obi Wan, Yoda, whoever, they're all together or whatever, and Anakin's like, the Neimoidians can't be trusted. They're like, he just totally generalizes and antagonizes the Neimoidians. Mace Windu, like you need
waiting for that.
Mace Windu to drop the hammer in those moments, almost
Woke
like
Windu?
we almost used it in the wrong way in the prequels. Like I wish Anakin was outspoken in a really kind of like just
Ignorant way,
insular kind of idiotic way, and then Mace Windu then dropped the hammer, and he does in this book. And again, Mike Chen should just continue chronicling all of this because I think he does such a good job with. Especially Mace, kind of referring to Anakin throughout the book.
Yeah.
He's disgruntled sort of nature with Anakin. He does not like the chosen one. He does.
Yeah. I think you just said it. Like if there was a Mace show, he would be trying to cut down Anakin. Like that would be his thing. But he would have that would be his major motivation. Would be like
it's like what we thought of Boba Fett. We were like, Boba Fett has to climb out and want to kill Han Solo, right? And it's like, I guess the Mace show doesn't have to be that. I think the Mace show could be like he hangs out with some like mods at the bottom of Coruscant. He like, you know what I mean? It like doesn't have to.
Yeah, the Mace show. What if it was like full dark side? He's just done like after that. He's just full dark side, but he just like wants.
I think Mace should maybe be like in a like I don't know, maybe put him in a wheelchair, like a kind of like a space chair, and he kind of like teaches someone to do something. Like I don't know if you can
Professor
do
X.
Yeah, I think you have to Professor.
We can't do that show. We can't do the show, but I don't know.
Yeah. Or
I don't think you can do like he falls out of like it's a 1,000-story window. I don't know if that's survivable.
I think from the Force it is. I mean, okay.
If Reva can like vault around Dio, I'm pretty sure Mace could do something.
Darth Maul,
right?
spider legs. End of argument. Moving forward.
I know it's just an arm, Mace. It's just an arm, and you didn't even fall down like an infinite shaft,
but a flesh wound.
Like,
yes, exactly. I want to say 2 things. I think I have 2 thoughts about Mace Windu. One about the book, and then one in general relating back to the story. So first about the book, I think Grant, you mentioned this aspect of Anakin that he is the chosen one. So he's so powerful, and he just flies on instincts because his instincts are pretty dead on because it's guided by the Force. But he needs to be humbled. And that's what Anakin is missing, right? He needs to understand that he's part of a bigger process. And I think that's Mace Windu's biggest problem is like, the part of me is like, Mace Windu there's a Freudian slip. Mace Windu probably thinks he is the chosen one, but he's worried because he needs to be, if he's going to be the chosen one, he needs humility. Yeah. And I mean, he wasn't sorely lacking in that. And his job, I think, when he looks at Anakin is, I am going to humble you. That is the only role I play, is to humble you.
Well, I think they try to humble people from birth. That's why they try to get the Jedi so young. But Anakin not only was older than the usual sort of Padawan, but also just won a pod race. Like he's coming off a pretty big high. Like I just like it just didn't seem like like you couldn't humble him. And then when his hubris and his arrogance pays off, because his midi-chlorian count is like off the charts. It's like it's a slow moving car crash, right? Like
it really is.
Everyone can see what's going to happen here. He is very good. He is very effective, but he never was humbled from childhood. He was told he was the Sun Dragon and that he would amount to greatness.
I love they brought that back. That Chen brought that back.
That was touching. Honestly, that was like the only time in the book where I got really kind of like emotional. I was like, this is tough stuff.
I forgot about that when he started telling me, like, this sounds really familiar, and I had to Google. I'm like, oh, that's right, it's from the Revenge of the Sith novelization, which is amazing, and that explains Anakin so much. Like, he grew up with that story. He sees himself in that story. The other thing about Mace Windu is that I don't know if I see him falling to the dark side. Part of me wonders if if because like he uses the lightsaber form, right? That's that's closest to the dark side, right? Aggressive. But I feel like it's someone who is only so centered who could do that. Like I feel like you could do everything the Mace Windu and he would never fall to the dark side.
No,
right? I feel like because that shows his capability. But I don't know.
He's the ideal Jedi, really. He's what I think Ahsoka and Mace Windu and I guess Luke for a certain time are very similar in that I think they've honed the light and the dark within them. And I think that the perfect Jedi is a Mace Windu type, someone who understands there's inevitable darkness that's you just gotta deal with
letting it control.
You just need to deal with control it.
Out. Yeah.
It's a
fact.
You
just need to choose the light. Yeah.
It's a choice. It's always a choice. And it's made the choice to, understand it's there and sort of like I don't know, sort of embrace it. Whereas other Jedi are just like, no, I'm just green or blue saber and I'm full light side, and I will never talk about the dark side. I dare not talk about like any dark side things, like hidden relationships or anything like that. Like, whereas Mace is like, no, it's all on the table, and I understand this dark side, and it's probably it's in all of us, and I'm going to, stick the center path, the center road with the amethyst blade.
Yeah, I think you're right. About that. There's no way that thing, because he's too powerful to actually be kept alive in canon, right? Because it's just like, he would make a difference.
He's OP. He's like the OP Jedi. Because I mean, I don't know. Like he was going to kill Palpatine. Like I don't think Palpatine would have won, and I don't think that situation. I don't think Mace would have been overtaken if Anakin did not arrive. I think
he wasn't there.
Mace would have resolutely killed Palpatine in that moment. Like,
you don't think he was getting toyed with a little bit by?
No, I think Mace was a real threat, and that the Anakin buildup was all for this. It was like, I need him to come be my apprentice at some point because Mace Windu is going to
kill me.
Yeah, I don't think Mace would have. I don't think Palpatine would have survived if Anakin didn't, because it was the distraction that did it. Like I think he had him. I think I have a bit of a solution of how you can have a Mace Windu show.
Oh boy.
But I don't know if it's the one people are going to want. It has to be really short time period. It can only take place in the underside, like in the under levels of Coruscant. He gets nursed back to health. He knows who he is. He gets distracted with a side mission that's huge, and he has to sacrifice himself at the end. So in other words, he can't ever get out of it. It has to be like, if you want one more Mace Windu story, it's the last story, and he never gets back up to the top, because once he gets back up to the top, he's too powerful, right? So he has to make the decision that I'm going to sacrifice myself for this. This is more important. This child or whatever, or this family.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like someone is onto Bail Organa or Obi Wan, like the hidden children. Like he figures that stuff out, and he's got it. Yeah, he's in like an impossible.
You know what that is, though? I don't think it's a Mace Windu show, but I think it's a great inciting incident for Mace Windu crashing through someone's apartment window and being like, this, that, and the other. Get this. Go to this world. I'm gonna die now, and it's sort of like it could incite something huge.
It's just Mace Windu the raid, right? But he dies at the end, so you literally just have him.
Okay, I mean, I'm down for that.
You just have him fighting his way up Coruscant, and he dies at the end for whatever.
Wait, so it's like it's Tarantino directs, Wars movie, and it's basically Mace Windu the raid. His saber is sparking and broken when he lands.
It's a fight.
He has to basically fight Vader style with like just the Force.
I'll put it this way: it's a 2-hour movie. His lightsaber is never not ignited. Like it is just fight after fight all the way up.
One up to me is constant lightsaber is better than no lightsaber. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Someone would be like the whole time rampaging in the lower levels, but I don't know.
Now I'm getting really
All feeds are like it's Mace Windu.
It's 1917. It's all one take, hidden one take. That lightsaber's never not ignited.
Listen,
he wrote this movie.
That show. I want that. I think young Mace is where to start. Honestly, young Mace.
I think that's the way. If you're gonna do it, you gotta do
framework. It's great framework to go back and explore a young Jedi in training. Yeah, I would do that show before the what we're talking about, which is like Mace post window fall, post like I don't know, probably getting cybernetic.
That's a story the kids want, though. And by the kids, I mean me.
I mean, he's very angry, and he would be very angry after that moment. And what about Samuel Jackson? That is like his element. Like,
he's angry. Or a front, like, yeah. So okay, we can't talk about.
We talked about a character in a book, and then somehow started talking about Mace Windu again. But so we talked about Rogue.
Yeah, I want to talk about Mill.
Yeah, exactly.
Mill.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. Yeah. So we have a Zabrak female 10-year-old, I think, youngling.
10ish?
So maybe younger. And
2 hearts. Zabrak's got 2 hearts.
Zabraks do have 2 hearts. That's correct. Canon. So she has a thing where when she feels the Force, she feels suffering all the time. That's just like she opens herself up and she just feels the suffering of others and it overtakes her. And she gets
cool. Yeah, that's cool. But I like that aspect. And then she really doesn't like lightsabers. And I was like, a lightsaber's like the coolest thing. Like, I don't like, that's like the coolest part of being a Jedi is you can lightsaber. Just like, no, like, it's violence.
That's where you end and Mill begins.
I was like, you can be defensive. You can block laser bolts. Like, it doesn't have to be strictly violence. Like, you block defensive.
You can open doors.
There's an entire style that I think is just blocking. Like, I'm almost certain there's an entire style that has nothing to do with attack. But
absolutely, fully defensive. Agreed. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what wins. That's what wins it against Palpatine in the end.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
I think it's more the attitude her peers have about lightsabers is what turns her off.
Yeah, they're kind of like, I can't wait to get a sweet.
I can't wait to start chopping them off.
Yeah, chopping up battle droids. I was like, okay, yeah, like, but the droids. I mean, like, it's not. I don't know. I just didn't see the whole beat.
Droids with consciousness.
Cutting up a light. Okay. Whatever. All right. Yeah. Well, I mean, read Shadow of the Sith and get back to me.
Okay. I will. I will do both of those things, actually. Yeah, I know. I thought she was kind of great. I mean, obviously, we get her, Anakin as a mentor to her. And he actually helps her out, which was cool, which shows, Anakin's development. But yeah, so, I mean, and her ability is key to, helping everyone survive and get through this. And then at the end, it's like after all these heroic efforts by everyone to nurture her and bring her through, Yoda doesn't really actually do the best thing in the world actually with her, where he's like, it'll be fine, just shut up, you're going to be a Jedi.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then she's like, nope, I'm out. I'm out.
That was a rough read for Yoda.
Yeah, it was a rough read.
Yeah, that was
not feeling looking very empathetic at that moment. But the war, whatever way.
He's got a lot going on. He's being pulled in a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he thinks he knows kids when he's talking to Anakin earlier in the book.
Yeah.
It's kind of his own hubris of he knows the child's mind, but the child's mind is unknowable because it's
right. And I think he's
so new to the world, new to the galaxy.
Believes in the Force too, right? Like he just it will all work out. Like if you need to leave, you need to leave, but let's give it time. But it's done in such a quick way that I feel like he couldn't do his true Yoda approach because he's probably figuring out 15 different battles that need to happen. And
Dad's busy right now. He's got other things he's got to worry about.
Speaking of dads, I think we get our answer for why Padme doesn't fall for Daddy Wan Kenobi in this book. And I think it has to do with his hair.
Oh, his hair. That's right.
They go after the mullet
15 minutes.
pretty hard in this book.
Really do.
I always thought it was a pretty sweet look, but apparently laughable to Padme and Anakin.
Yeah. What's wrong with hockey hair? Eh? What's wrong with the business in the front and party in the back? I don't understand.
They haven't bought the T-shirt, guys. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, and it actually shames him into his episode 3 look.
It's true.
Yeah.
Which is actually really the whole Clone Wars. He looked like that.
Yeah.
It was a really fun way that they did that Mike Chen did that, where he was like, you know what, we're going to be on the HoloNet news a lot. By the way, they're our competitor. You don't need to watch HoloNet news. You need Core World news.
Core World news.
Yeah. I don't know. They easily could have been watching Core World news during this whole
about them dealing with misinformation and shoddy editing. So,
I mean, if they're misrepresenting Obi Wan and they're cutting up the footage, I mean, there's your evidence right there that they're not bringing you, full on speculation and opinion news like us.
Yeah. Don't
Right.
believe their fair and balanced tagline.
Yeah. Don't believe it. Don't buy the hype. But yeah, so they got to look good. So he changed his hairstyle. That's pretty great.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, I have a question for mostly Grant, but actually for both of you.
Okay, I
because
can
you both
say.
know this character and I don't. Her last name is Aboleth,
Abeloth.
which is Aboleth, but it's really close to Abeloth.
No, yeah, we're talking about the old Legends
Oh, yeah.
Abeloth.
I will let Grant take this.
Which is a sort of like Force, a dark Sith, not Sith, but like dark side entity.
Yeah.
That existed thousands of years ago that I guess comes back in the Legends books. And I haven't read these books in a long time, but she is a dark side entity. She's even being connected, I think, in newer, sort of closer to canon books that are still Legends. I think she's been connected to sort of like Mortis and that stuff. Like she's almost the mother, but she's like dark side. Like she's almost like the ultimate sort of matriarch, dark matriarch character. If you can think of the brother, it's almost like the dark matriarch would be Abeloth, a sort of like restless dark side wraith sort of character that's existed for eons. Yeah.
So my question is, do you think they were laying a little groundwork here?
No.
Because like, I mean, for a sequel trilogy, like maybe she takes a couple wrong turns and
no.
Oh,
No,
I'm also
it's
really
not
happy.
even. I didn't even think about that. I was just like, I just thought you're bringing up. I just think Star Wars is in desperate need of a sort of arch female villain, like to basically, wow the masses like Vader did back in the 70s. Like in the original trilogy. Like I think that that's possible, and I think that could be a really fun character, and I think that would be really juicy material for someone. And I think they just keep recycling sort of the old, pasty guy, and it's like, let's just do something fun. Let's do a new villain. And so I always thought Rey could have been connected to Abeloth. I've had hundreds of theories I've shared on this show that we don't really dwell in theory crafting anymore, but back in the day we used to do a lot, especially during the sequel trilogy. I was always like, and then Abeloth, right?
Yeah.
It's like the whisper, the female
sequel
whispering
trilogy.
on Act 2. That's Abeloth, right? She was like my Mephisto of the sequel trilogy. I was
So
like,
true. I forgot how many times you said Abeloth during that time.
Yeah.
I was like, and so Abeloth, sweet. Like I did not think Palpatine was the move. Really, I was like, okay.
But don't you think there's some room for Abeloth later on in a sequel trilogy or some,
No, 'cause I think what you do now is you basically have Rey's whole like this shadow Rey that they basically set up in the Rise of Skywalker is like something that she'll be dealing with, I imagine, for the rest of her life. Like seeing a fanged version of yourself like attack you I don't know. That's not the Force tree for Luke. That's like a different. It's like not the Force cave.
Right.
For Luke. That's like a different whole thing. That's like
you don't think Abeloth should be like a big
Palpatine,
bad?
and half that is very evil. And like the incarnation's even developed enough where she has a double-bladed lightsaber. She has dark robes. She has sharp teeth. Like that's more imagery than Luke got. Luke was like, I'm the spitting image of my father, and I'm going to make the same mistakes. It's not the same thing. I think what Rey has is a real dark side connected to Palpatine within her that is going to be a turmoil. And if I hate planting offspring with a female lead, but it's like if she has offspring and they're twins, it's like they could be dark. Like one could be dark. I mean, I don't see why not.
That's the question: is if we want to appease old EU fans, do we kick the can down the road for the Jason and Solo story to Rey's offspring, right? And that's where we get the Abeloth stuff. Which, by the way, I was like, I know all the Abeloth stuff, but I'm like, I haven't read those books yet. I'm still like 15 books away from those books. So I'll let you know.
Yeah, I think she does turn one of those kids to the dark side.
Yeah, I was googling and
the ancient.
It just spoiled me. I know who. So now I gotta wait 15 books to find out how that happens. So he's already had. Oops. Gender away. So now we know which of the twins.
But so Abeloth is a big deal, and I've always just hoped that Abeloth, I didn't get any of that sort of readings, really.
I'll let you know when I get there.
But
so there's a popular character in Boston who entertains the masses downtown, and his name is Keytar Bear. He's a man in a bear suit.
Every time Keytar is written, and that's a lot, by the way, in this book.
Yeah, I imagine him holding a Keytar in a bear costume, and that's what he shoots like blaster bolts out of his Keytar. But yes, no, that's my own problem. Yeah, no, Kitar was an interesting character as well. He was another main character.
Some of the deeper concepts I got out of this book. I mean, Kitar was awesome. There's a fun character.
Before we
he was
move,
the young kind of like he was like the young sort of royal guard compared to Rude, who was the more seasoned.
He was a patriot, like he thought he was a radical trying to defend Cato Nemoidia.
Yes.
Yeah, and became a patsy basically.
Yeah, a tool of Asajj Ventress who played.
But tied into Mill quite a bit, to bring it back to Mill, right? Mill just sensed this like at first when they were explaining, Mill just sensed this like huge rage. I thought it was going to be
pain. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be Dooku or Ventress, right? Like I thought she was a dead size user, but I like the idea that it was it Rank? But yeah. Agreed. One thing I want to say about Mill as well is that she plays a pivotal role, I think, in Anakin getting Ahsoka. Right?
Yes.
If Mill was sticking around and was ready for a Padawan or ready to take a master, I think Anakin would have taken her on. And I think this is a great little story of like, because when you think about how fast he's just suddenly has a Padawan, which is what they play on in the Clone Wars cartoons, but it's just, to me, it's always felt so rushed. I think just having this breathing room of this story explains why he's just like, he was
a great master.
Cartoon,
well, it's funny because it's like almost like the Jedi Masters are the Knights Errant, and when you become a knight, you have to go through the rite of passage of dealing with the children, dealing with the younglings, and teaching. And this great line from Anakin where he's like, I don't think I was put in this galaxy to teach. And I was like, I don't think George had that intention either.
Yeah, I agree. And
I was like, we all as fans agree.
Yeah, but George created Ahsoka, with Filoni, but George wanted that to happen.
But what does Anakin give Ahsoka other than, I don't know, sort of like the willingness to help? Like, I don't know what he gives her other than like
the willingness to help and the willingness to rebel.
Okay, I guess, he gives her something.
Yeah, by any means necessary. Right?
I think if you think about actually, it just kind of popped in my head of like, she's pretty integral in early Rebellion era, right? Because in Clone Wars or in Rebels, who is she? What's her code name?
Fulcrum. It's almost
Fulcrum.
Like, yeah.
So like, if you think about it, Anakin sowed the seeds of destruction by mentoring of the Empire, by mentoring Ahsoka. Like Ahsoka is very key in the rebellion forming, which puts everything else into motion as well. That's
an interesting point. He was kind of the Obi Wan to Ahsoka, which is and
Ahsoka
kind of the Obi Wan.
And Ahsoka needs to access just some sort of like other layer to her Jedi, training to deal with Thrawn later on. So like maybe Anakin's teaching were exactly what she needed to deal with Thrawn, because Thrawn's estimating her as a Jedi.
Right.
And she's not a Jedi. She's a Jedi who was trained by Anakin Skywalker, who turned to Darth Vader. She's trained by someone who basically was fully in conflict their whole life, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes Ahsoka really a fascinating character. The more it's really hard to even put the scale in my mind, or like in your mind, like that, she was tutored by, Anakin Skywalker during wartime, and it makes her just such a fascinating character. Like, what did she learn? I can't wait. I didn't think I was due for another rewatch of Clone Wars, but now after this book, I absolutely need to watch
Every time I read one of these, I think I'm like, oh man, now I got to rewatch it again.
Yeah. But it's been a minute for me. It's been a few years, so I'm gonna go back and
guys, did Anakin invent the long-range comlink? Like, did Anakin invent that? Like, sort of is the technology that, because I guess someone else invented it, but he said he was on a mission in Terrace where they invented some sort of like long-range comlink.
That
gives to Obi Wan, and I'm like, is that like almost a connection to like the Last Jedi and the sort of long-distance comm that like
Skyping?
But I guess the tracker that Rey and Finn have, like, it was just like, did Anakin invent that technology? Because it makes sense. He is such a tinkerer that he would maybe invent the comlink that goes a little further or something. But I don't know. I thought that was cool. I wrote that down.
I have a lot of random notes. Did you catch the Cal Kestis?
No.
No.
Yeah, and
Is
I'm
there
trying
a
to find-
name check? Is there a name check?
What was his master's name? I can't remember his master's name originally.
Oh
but
yeah.
His master's get. I'm looking for the quote, but his master gets name checked, and there's a little redhead boy with him. So I'm pretty sure it's Cal Kestis.
Yeah, Jero to Paul.
Yeah, I think so.
Yaro to Paul, yeah.
Character. Master to Paul. I loved those scenes where you were training, and even in this book, they talk about how like, oh, the younglings, like before the what is it called, the gathering or whatever, they go get the crystals or whatever. It's like they don't just do that. Sometimes they like, obviously there's like meditation, but there's like acrobatics training, and I was like, oh, is that in that room where we are in a Fallen Order where we're jumping around as
Yeah.
Kestis? Like, is that where the acrobatic training happens? Like,
Absolutely.
I just love that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I had, I have a bunch of notes.
I found it. If you care.
Nice, yeah.
25. Oh, where'd it go? He continued watching Anakin, who took a moment to gather himself before stopping to talk with Jaro Tapal and the red-haired youngling who trailed him.
Oh, nice.
That's this Easter egg.
Good catch.
Nice. That's great.
So many Jedi are named. There's like Jedi named, I think during Anakin's knighting, there's like 8 Jedi named. They're all new.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard any of those names before. I was like, another Keldor that's not Plo Koon? Whoa.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm in. And he has like
there's
sweet gas
10,000,
masks.
so.
I'm like, yeah, I'm in. I'm into it. Yeah, I have just random notes here. I don't know what else I have.
Yeah, I mean, I just got a Qui-Gon note here. I took like more notes for this book than any other Star Wars book.
Really?
I just kept feeling like everything was important.
Right? Everything felt like a reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
But I mean, just like important stuff. I was like, oh, this is really developing. It's like, and that's what this book is. It's like every chapter develops this relationship in a very important way.
Well, don't we talk about this event, the sort of like hubris of the Jedi and the fall of the Order? Like, don't we talk about this more than most other canonical events? Like,
yeah,
it's the kind of thing that is like a driving, inciting sort of event for a catalyst for the rest of, I guess, Star Wars and the Jedi.
Yeah.
So we talk about this a lot, and Mike Chen gets to really shape a lot of this fun discourse here. And one thing he does is when Padme and Anakin go to the underlevels and they go to the Amandasi market, which was like, why is this not a Disney World? It's like basically a street food market from like different planets all over the galaxy. And I was like, so each little cuisine has to be like wildly different. I was like, that's such a cool concept. And she goes there and she sees sort of the struggle of the poor. And Anakin doesn't see that stuff. I mean, I guess you can take it as he's come from nothing, and the Jedi are selfless. But like, are the Jedi utilitarian and they don't feel empathy? Like, do the Jedi have empathy?
We're not here to free slaves.
Yeah.
One of the most famous Jedi quotes.
The Jedi do not have empathy.
No, I mean, I'm sure
they're just utilitarian. They just do the most. They just like look at the reasoning.
This is the reason why they fell, right? Because there's so much trying not to give into base emotions that they have trouble recognizing it or feeling it in others.
Right. If you let go to attachments to everything, then you're letting go to empathy. Empathy, right? Like you're letting go to all your day-to-day reactions. But yet they're supposed to be the defenders of peace and justice, and
that's why you could almost argue that the theme of the entire, I guess, the saga films is to have. Well, I guess the first 6 is that empathy wins out. That like.
Yeah.
Empathy is such an important characteristic in our nature that it needs to boil down to a son showing empathy to his father in this 11th hour. It's kind of a gorgeous sentiment. And
you see that in Obi Wan, right? He gets put in the series when he gets buried under the rocks. He flashes on little Luke and little Leia, right? And,
that's right.
Need to protect these younglings, right? And what he's learned from them. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was a pretty powerful moment, and that kind of just that definitely shined a light on sort of a flaw of the Jedi of that era.
That's really cool. Interesting concept. They've still got it. That's the thing with the Jedi. It's like, yes, they're adaptable, but it also makes them a moving target for us. For people that are trying to nail down what actually it means and what are they.
I do love in this book at one point Anakin goes, "If I hadn't become a Jedi, I'd I'd probably be a pod racer or something. I was like, that is the Infinities. The Infinities is like a star pod racer somewhere in the galaxy.
Would
And
have never found Anakin.
Like, I can't think of another organic Infinities, or if he doesn't become a Jedi, it's like he's definitely a pod racer.
Well, what's great about that story is you could tell it on the personal level. So you have the personal level going on of what's Anakin's life story, but also the level too. So you can cut back those things.
That's a great Infinities.
We'll do it. Let's
So I have another infinity for you that that Mike Chen brings up and presents to the fandom, just like on a silver platter.
Yes.
And it's a quote from Obi Wan where he opines. I've got the quote, but why even? I'm just going to paraphrase.
Yeah.
What would have had? So this whole time, like Obi Wan's on the HoloNet news, and then so is Duchess Satine as she solidifies the Confederacy of Independent Systems. No. Wait, neutral systems?
Neutral. Yeah.
It's not a confederacy. It's
Kato Nemoidia, basically joins the neutral
at
system.
the very end.
The neutral systems. It's not CIS is independent systems, but this is the neutral systems. And so the irony that a Mandalorian is the bastion of nonviolence is amazing. But yeah, so there's a part late in the thing where Obi-Wan's seeing her as she establishes this entity and all the great things she's accomplished. And he's thinking about like, well, I was just doing this as well. He's like, what would have happened if I had left with her? Would we have affected the galaxy in the same way? And so I wanted to ask y'all, what do you think would have happened if Obi-Wan left the Order for Satine, and what would they have done together?
I think Palpatine. Well, I think the galaxy would be doomed.
Yeah, I agree.
That's for sure. I mean, I have to think Obi-Wan, especially after watching Obi-Wan, the series, and reading this book, and just delving more into Obi-Wan as a character. He really is, I think, the steadfast hero of the saga and of all of Star Wars. And I think he was we always accuse Jedi for being too reserved, but maybe his sort of falling back on inquiry and sort of his reserved nature, maybe it did serve him. Maybe it worked. Like maybe it worked for one of them, and it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And until I guess he starts to see the empathy for Luke and Leia later in his life and things like that, like. Maybe gives him a new way of living, but it's mostly his Jedi teachings paid off. Someone who studied the book, it worked. Like it worked.
Like he believes in the Force in the way that Qui-Gon believes in the Force, right? Where it's just like just trust in the will of the Force, and the rest of the dogma just like take with a grain of salt. But like Obi-Wan's also an idealist when it comes to the Republic. Yeah. And wants the best to serve and be the best Jedi as he's being asked to be by Yoda and the Council and everyone else. But I think it is that willingness to just let go and follow the will of the Force that carries him through his.
To kind of go back to your initial question of the Infinities is so. I always think of how little of a role Obi-Wan plays in Episode 1, except defeating Maul. He's not really in that movie much at all, right? So if you think about that movie,
he's a Sith Lord in a Star Wars film. It's not a big deal.
Yeah,
NBD.
No, but that's the thing. If you think about it, if you take him out of the equation, Qui-Gon might still end up there, right? Still end up with Anakin,
right?
Still end up on Naboo at the very end, but there's no one left to defend him. So Maul lives, and who trains Anakin? I don't know. Like, does he end up going back to? Does he end up going?
He doesn't get trained.
He doesn't get trained. Maul's still alive, and then he's not being trained. So that means Palpatine can just swoop in and scoop him up.
Or if exactly.
If Palpatine knows he exists, which I don't think he does.
But maybe he feels him, right? Because even if he's on because I think all the end he still sees him flying the starfighter. He still sees him blowing up the droid command ship. Right, like and so when everyone goes back to Coruscant, because I think you still bring the kid to Coruscant, he still ends up there. He just gets rejected, and I think Palpatine senses it, or at least knows it's happening, and is like, "Bring me this child."
Right, and the Jedi don't want to touch them, even though like Padme's, well, this kid was like Obi-Wan to train this kid, but
I do think if Obi-Wan did go and retire with Satine, I do think he would fight back with a massive like Mandalorian army against whatever threat did arise, like the Empire, what have you.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. He'd be there waiting for Maul when Maul tries to take over Mandalore, and I don't think he succeeds.
And maybe Satine is able to be more effective because she has another really strong leader with her, right? So the two of them together, they're able to start this neutrality order that's bigger, and so it ends the fighting in a way that Palpatine.
That's actually a really fun story for maybe if you want to go back in time and explore the Mandalorians. A Jedi. I know Tar Vizsla was a Jedi turn, Mandalorian turned Jedi. Goes back to being a Mandalorian or whatever.
Yeah,
that story was. But it'd be fun if it's like a Jedi and a Mandalorian team up, and that's why the Empire rises to such strength, because you have the cunning and the expertise of a Jedi mixed with the warrior, path of the way of the Mandalorians.
Oh my god, Obi-Wan Kenobi as a Mandalorian is like the biggest orgasm in the entire world.
Wild, by the way. I can already see like the hot toys figure where it's just like Obi-Wan decked out in Mando.
Don't you want to see? I want an art book. An art of Star Wars. It's literally every single character as they would look like as a Mandalorian. Every character. That's all I want.
Don't we get Obi-Wan in Mando armor for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, they put a jetpack on him, and he
Oh my god, Dooku with the cape swag.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm telling you, each one can get their own little.
I want to see a Dooku in Land of Infinities where it's just like a real caper, Like I just.
Was that a pun? Because they both wear capes.
No, I mean, like I don't know what else you would title that at that point,
What Star Wars caper?
But like, that would be the ultimate caper. I mean, Grievous would have to be there too because his cape is pretty legend.
Yeah, Boba's got a dope cape too.
Actually, over here, have you seen?
I'm trying to think of the best capes. I don't know. Lando probably wins, but
yeah.
Oh, I think so. I think Lando's got it in lock. I mean, he's
got the most. He has the most
cape game
and best capes. But have you seen the Grogu and Mandalorian armor that's been floating around recently?
Grogu and Mando armor?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Only cartoon.
We see that? I don't know. I don't know if I need that in my life.
No, it looks like World of Warcraft. It's weird.
Yeah.
But are the ears sticking out of the helmet, or are the ears encased in helmet?
I think they're out of the helmet. It's which is like it's really. I mean, the artist is a really great artist, and I think they did it accurately. And it's also realizing, good job. Please don't ever do this.
When does Grogu find that? When does Grogu find like the floating chair that Yoda has?
Yeah,
the prequel.
Well, soon, right? Because he's already got the little.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
the next level
thing. He can go after the chair.
Or does he get the spider walker? That's
a little too like Modoc-y for me though. I don't know if I'm ready for like Grogu in a chair. Like
I think it's coming though. They need him mobile and not walking.
I know it's tough. You can't make a puppet walk, so it's like they're gonna have some real problems there.
Designs where the Grogu is a backpack essentially.
Yeah,
and the ship has a kind of like back seat. I'm like, does he ride as a backpack now?
Probably.
I think Grogu's a backpack in the next.
I think so too. Yeah, I think
that's how I carry my Chewini. I carry my dog in a backpack. That's the best way to move around with a Chewini.
And if you're going to splunk down into the sort of caverns of Mandalore, you're going to need Grogu in like a backpack, right?
Yeah.
Or a baby Bjorn or something.
I think it's going to be like more a baby Bjorn because he's got a jetpack back there and a cape. By the way,
Space Bjorn could be huge.
That's great. My wife and I have been on vacation throwing our 2-year-old over our shoulder, like her arms draped over my shoulder, walking around the pool. And I kept saying, like, Luke and Yoda. And so the little 2-year-old's like, so now it's not backpack. And now it's not arms. Like, Luke, Yoda.
Yeah. That's so cute.
All right. I'm going to put a capper on this thing unless you guys have anything else you want to see.
I think we hit on everything. I do. Oh, you know what? One quick thing. It really is quick. I just want to bring it back to Ben. You mentioned at the very beginning is that there's so much writing in this about his obsession with his mechanical arm. And I love that going throughout of it. And I love that we get that. It makes sense to Tinker and Anakin not being satisfied. And it just sows that little seed of why like Vader's always working on his armor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And like how the sand grains get in there and like how like conscious of it he is. And then but then also like ultimately he comes to terms with it and he's like, oh, I'm stronger in this hand now.
Yeah.
And I can use this. And like he finds his balance with it. And that's like So maybe it's not the worst thing in the world that he's a quadriplegic. You know, he's still plenty powerful as Vader.
It'd be fun if it was just additive and almost like seductive to use the enhanced strength and like all that kind of stuff to then when Luke looks at it later in the films, it's like adds that sort of there's it's actually if you use it, you're going to be able to accomplish a lot. And although you'll be crushing people and whatnot. Yeah.
Seen in Heir of the Empire where Luke uses a mechanical arm to escape a prison cell. Like, there you go. I'd be like, I'm so glad I have this fake arm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could see how they'd be handy.
Yeah. Wah.
No, nothing.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Sort of time.
There's just there's a lot of that. It's a lot of like cyber metaphor going on. It's like a lot.
Yeah. I feel like we've talked for like an hour and 20 minutes about this book, and I feel like we haven't scraped the paint off the Star Destroyer yet. Like there's so much chunky goodness, like lore and insight in this story.
The plot's good, but it's not deep, and it's all about the characters. So this is, even if you've heard this and you haven't read it, it's really still worth reading. You'll get so much out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, we really didn't even spoil anything, I think. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's a great adventure. So
we still don't know much about basic basilisk physiology.
Yeah, true. Indeed. All right, so
lots of cake can be eaten.
I have a quote here that I wanted to bring in, and I don't know whose point of view this is actually from, but so I'll just read it. Qui-Gon would forever tie two opposing forces together, their partnership always edging towards spinning out of control, but always finding a way to make a happy landing. It took not having that intrinsic link to Anakin for Obi-Wan to finally see how much they needed each other, not just on a strategic level, but to keep each other in check. Obi-Wan's tactful diplomacy pulling in Anakin's impossible drive, and Anakin's overwhelming everythingness, removing a layer of Obi-Wan's measured clinical thinking. So that's the other thing we didn't really talk about. They're tied. They are constantly being pulled together.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was kind of beautiful. And then the fact that they used Obi-Wan, like Qui-Gon there to exemplify it. They never say the word brotherhood, I don't think, in the book, or brothers at all. But that was them that was the tie together of the whole book, I think.
Yeah. I had that same. I'm glad you remembered to have that. I had that highlighted too. I think it's such a key part of it. Yeah.
There's definitely.
That's the heart of it.
I definitely have a thought that maybe Anakin was in discord, ever since Qui-Gon's passing, because Qui-Gon would have been able to sort of it's been flexible with Anakin, but also more stringent with Anakin, and I think that. Yeah, I think that truly was the sort of, I think Obi-Wan's clinical nature and sort of, I guess, detective sort of by the book sort of nature wasn't the best for Anakin. I think he needed someone who was willing to trust the living force and willing to trust, hey, Anakin's going to do a flip and cut off a bunch of droids' heads and he's going to pull off a move that, I don't think he would be that showy with Qui-Gon. Like, would Anakin be... So I don't know.
I think so. I think Qui-Gon would have, like you said, nurtured it and just been like, just be yourself, do your thing, like whatever that is.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, he saw the downfall. Qui-Gon saw the downfall of his master Dooku, and like Dooku is into some weird stuff, man. And there's a line, like when it starts getting to Force lightning, that's where you should probably start calling in an adult or something.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean. I will say, I think you're right. I think we talk about this all the time. What would have happened with Qui-Gon? Like Qui-Gon was the father, the mentor that Anakin was destined to have, and it just didn't happen. But Obi-Wan was also taught by Qui-Gon, more so than any other person, right? So, or except for Rael Abeloth. Rael Aberoth, is that his name? Rael. I'll just call him Rael.
Yeah, Rael.
Qui-Gon's teachings were passed on, but the best that Obi-Wan could do it, and that's what we got. But yeah, it is sort of fascinating.
It's true
to think about, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more.
And I think the other thing to mention real quick is that we talk about the what ifs all the time, but their entire relationship is surrounded by that what if, and it's both highlight if they both are questioning constantly what if Obi-Wan was alive. And I think that I think that's a poison pill in the middle of their relationship in some ways.
Quickly, Anakin's the worst date ever. I just want to end the podcast.
Oh, you didn't think that was romantic? Like going for I thought that was great. I thought
not pay for the speeder that they take to the underlevels. She puts a flower in her hair, and he's like, I thought we were being inconspicuous. I'm like,
Yeah.
you can't just compliment the
I know. Just
flower
say
in her
nice
hair
flower.
like
It
for
looks really
1
nice.
second.
nice flower. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I don't
look
know. There's just a
pretty.
lot going on where I was just like, all right, Anakin. And then
That's so funny.
and he doesn't
I did-
notice the pour. Like, I don't know. It was just like, I
Doesn't
don't know.
eat the sandwich that,
Worst
that she
date
bought.
ever.
She hunted out and bought for him.
Oh yeah, she goes to find like Tatooine-esque
Oh yeah, and he's got notes about that.
Yeah.
flings. Yeah.
He sucks.
He's like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost as good as Tatooine, but like,
Yeah.
yeah,
As opposed to saying, "This is great. Thank you for a taste of
Yeah,
home."
I know.
yeah.
Not that hard.
Other ways to handle this date, but all right.
Oh my gosh, that's
Uh,
amazing. I did think like George Lucas would have loved that scene though. Them like just like yeah, on a closed course, just like racing, and then going out for a bite to eat. Like it was very
it gave me It gave me feelings of like Kira and Han sort of like vibes, where it's
Yeah.
almost like sweet speeder, like American Graffiti stuff,
Exactly,
with
right.
Anakin and the underlevels, and like just I don't know. It's kind of an antiquated idea of like guy and gal go on date night, and
yeah, but
drive around, but like
that's the roots
but
of
like
Star
that
Wars.
is American Graffiti, and that like is George, and so like I
Yeah.
definitely felt that in those scenes.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. We did it. We covered it. I swear to God.
Did it.
I swear to the maker. Yeah. If you have any other notes on this book, please reach out and talk to us on Instagram or Twitter or Discord. We're on there doing our thing. We've got a couple more exciting weeks coming up of content that we've been putting in the works. So I think next week will be comics ?
Sure. Yeah. We got Dr. Afro to cover. So we can-
Okay. I think it'll probably be Afro next week. And then the week after we have a special guest. So that'll be awesome. But yeah, so thanks very much for listening to us this week. I hope you enjoyed this book, and we'll talk to you next week. May the force be with you.
This is Grex Kondak signing off. For the latest breaking news, follow @CoreWorldNews on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you and good night.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.